Well, we're now joined via Zoom by the President of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Kgoshi Mathupa Mokoena. Kgoshi, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thanks for having me.
All right. What are your immediate thoughts on watching today's traditional ascension?
Peter, I must say, CONTRALESA and many of our royal leadership in South Africa, we want to welcome this very special and historic occasion where one of our own was baptized in a biblical term, or went through all the rituals that is to be done by any royal leader before you can be formally recognized by government. As CONTRALESA, we're very much excited that finally this has happened.
All right, there are very many legal aspects to this, but from a traditional cultural view, how important is it to preserve these rituals as much as we can?
We are so excited, Peter, because if you remember, the Zulu nation, it's one of the kingdom, the kingship that is a role model to all of us royal leadership, and the kingship in our country, the continent, and the country at large. It is so important to have these rituals because as a traditional leader or a royal leader, there is no way you can ascend to this position without going through all the rituals as dictated to by the family. And we're very grateful that the Zulu nation as well and the Zulu leadership, they deemed it fit not to bypass some of these rituals. They went through them because by so doing, it is paving a way for you as a Kgoshi to be called by your title. Now, let's look at the Zulu King, the King Misuzulu. Now, these rituals had paved the way for him to be called Bayete, because you can't be called Bayete before you go through all the rituals that has been put before you by the elders and the royal leadership. Now, we saw this event today as one of the landmarks in the history of the Zulu nation. Because if you remember, Peter, it only happened about 51 years ago, and it happened now. Our wish, Peter, while we're excited, is that we so wish the elders can try to talk to the other rival groups. They'll forgive me for calling them that, to come together and be united. Because, Peter, if they don't do this, there is a danger of the Zulu nation to be divided. Because as an individual, you are going to get support from one or two members of the family or from that kingdom. So it's our wish as CONTRALESA that we wish there can be a magic wand where all the other groups can come together and agree as to how they move forward. Because now, after what had happened today, Peter, there is no going back. There is no going back. It's either you join the group or you'll be sidelined forever. And we don't want to see that happening in a royal family, Peter.
All right. So with the traditional rituals and ceremonies performed, can we safely say that the ancestors have fully anointed King Misuzulu, and that anybody who tries to interfere with that process is going against the will of the ancestors?
Look at how he was supported by not only the royal family, but by many traditional leaders and many leaders even from the continent. And if you go against this, obviously, I don't want to say you are inviting cares to you and your family, but it will not fly. You can see, even if there are some other people who are saying he is not, but the kind of support that he received, that was seen by everybody today, it is an indication that really the ancestors had welcomed him. When you go, what you call to Ngena Esibayeni, as it is called in Zulu, to enter the kraal, if you are not the rightful one, some other things might happen for you not to complete those rituals. He managed to go through all the rituals step by step, because I know as a traditional leader what is happening in there. And if he was not the rightful one, I can tell you now, Peter, we are going to get an announcement to say we are suspending or deferring or postponing these rituals until further notice, because things might have not gone well in there. But this one, it went so successfully, and you can see even by the mood of the people that live in AmaZulu, so that this is their king. They've accepted him, and hence I said there is no going back. Those who are not supporting him, I want to advise that let them please, in the best interest of this Zulu nation, to come together and support His Majesty King Misuzulu, in the best interest of all the Zulu nation.
Why do you think that there has been so much misunderstanding? Are there not set rules about how somebody is chosen, that the oldest of the oldest wife, or are there different ways that are open to interpretation that end up causing these confusions?
I was going to be surprised, Peter, if you are going to ask me that question. I know you want to put me under the bus, but I will respond to it, Peter, nevertheless. I know you. No, Peter, you know, cultures differs from area to area. There are instances where the successor to any leadership or a throne is identified by the inner royal family. The inner royal family will sit and say, because the sun had set, now let's look who will be the successor here. Now, the other ritual or the other practice is that what has happened here, where the Indlovukasi wrote a will that now, after me, my son will take over. As CONTRALESA, we are not going to question as to why this way. We accept all these cultures because it differ from area to area. But under normal circumstances, for example, at Mokoena Kraal, here at Mathupa in Bushbuckridge, where I am, and in Kgoshi, what will happen is that the inner royal family, when I'm no more, they will sit and identify the successor. There is no way I can sit and write a will as the Kgoshi. It's not allowed. By so saying, Peter, I am not saying it was wrong for what happened here in the Zulu leadership, because maybe this is how they're doing it.
Right.
So I've got no authority to question why are they doing the manner in which they've done in identifying the successor in a form of a will. But what I want to advise, Peter, is that when we are still alive as Amakosi, the Kgoshi royal leaders, let's make sure that we call the inner royal family and look at the genealogy as to immediately I'm no more. It must be known by everybody here that when I'm no more, who will succeed me? Now, we are leaving this thing until I'm no more, and the royal family, they are divided because many are having their own choices as to who's supposed to follow. We are the cause of this thing as royal leadership when we're still alive. Even our elders are to blame here, because some of them are afraid to talk about this while I'm still alive. And the danger is that when I'm no more, everybody in the family claims to be the rightful one. And this can be avoided if the elders can sit down and say, let's draw up a genealogy to say who will follow who when this happened. Right. If we can adhere to that, Peter, I can tell you some of these disputes won't be there. But at the same time, let me accept and agree that, of course, the dispute in royal family, it's common. You find even where they know that you are the rightful one, someone from very far from this lineage, he will jump to the queue and say, no, I'm supposed to follow because the one who was in charge here, in fact, his mother or his grandfather or his great-great-father was not supposed to be the one. Only our clan is supposed to take over. But if we can stand up as this leadership and our elders to correct this while we are still alive, we can avoid many of these disputes, Peter.
Kgoshi, perhaps as we start to close, what will happen now with King Misuzulu and his interactions with the other Kgoshis?
Now, what had happened today, Peter, had paved a way for him to start doing many of his duties, because the one where the president will hand over the certificate, that is just a formality where you invite some other people to come in. But what was happening today is the key issue, because to be a king, you don't need a certificate. But just to formalize it, these days we have been given a certificate of recognition. After this, the king will continue with his duties. Preparations will go on so that this formal part I'm talking about, where even government will play a role and all those things. As we have noticed today, government did not play any part. It was only the royal family. Now, there is a second part where government will also come on board, where they'll formally hand over the certificates, formally recognizing him as the king. But as I'm speaking to you now, he is the king. He can now perform his duties. Hence, AmaKhosi were there to support him. Those AmaKhosi from now onwards, they will, from time to time, go and report to His Majesty as to what's happening in their respective areas. As I'm saying, Peter, it is done. The king is there. He's now ruling. No one will say anything. They can go and contest whatever, but the train is gone, Peter. It's up to people whether they adapt or they will remain isolated forever, Peter.
Kgoshi, thank you so much indeed. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Peter. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, that's Kgoshi Mathupa Mokoena, who's the president of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, joining us.